In 2026, the online course industry is, it's essentially this massive, highly profitable collection of digital graveyards. Like if you're listening to this, you almost certainly own a plot in one of them.
Oh, absolutely. We all do.
Right. It's that $50 video course on SEO or, graphic design that you bought on a Sunday night when you were feeling super motivated. You watched maybe 3 modules and then just abandoned it to gather dust on your hard drive.
Yeah. It's the ultimate illusion of progress. Because buying the information gives us that same dopamine hit as actually acquiring the skill, but without requiring any of the actual friction or sweat.
And that lack of friction is the exact problem we are pairing apart today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are exploring the death of that lonely online course and dissecting the meteoric rise of an entirely different educational paradigm. It's the done with you model, or as our French sources explicitly categorize it, the fait, avec, vous model.
Which translates exactly to that done with you.
Right. And to understand how this is completely rewiring adult education and independent work, we've got a really fascinating stack of primary sources today. We have the 2026 course catalogs and internal architectures of these highly intensive accelerators, specifically Sauce Writing, Live Mentor, Mastered, and Zen Factory.
We've also got some incredible podcast transcripts from independent workers, really in the trenches.
Yes, most notably this brilliant, very raw interview with digital marketer Claire Gallagher on the Being Freelance podcast. And finally, we're layering in deep dive analyses on the what they call the success engineering of modern solopreneurs.
So our mission for this deep dive is to basically deconstruct this hybrid model piece by piece. We want to extract the underlying survival and growth mechanics so that whether you're, a burned out freelancer trying to escape the hourly grind, or maybe a budding solopreneur looking to structure your first offer.
Or just someone fascinated by the future of how humans acquire complex skills.
Exactly. So you can engineer your own success using these exact blueprints.
To really ground this, let's look at the spectrum of how we buy solutions, because it usually falls into 2 really extreme camps. Let's use fitness as an analogy. On one end, you have pure do-it-yourself e-learning. Buying that Udemy course is like buying a treadmill for your basement.
Right. You possess the equipment.
You possess it. The potential for fitness is there. But because you are completely alone, isolated, and relying entirely on your own unprompted discipline, that treadmill almost inevitably becomes a very expensive clothes rack.
Because the isolation is the point of failure. The bottleneck in the modern world is never access to information, right?
Yeah.
You can Google the mechanics of running in 5 seconds. The bottleneck is execution and accountability.
Right on the other end of the spectrum, you have the done-for-you model. In business, this is hiring an agency or a one-on-one consultant. In our fitness analogy, this is like paying someone to literally run on the treadmill for you.
Which is funny to picture.
Right. The calories are burned on a spreadsheet somewhere, the project gets completed, but it requires 0 growth on your part. And crucially, it costs an absolute fortune because you're buying 100% of an expert's time.
Which leaves this massive, underserved gap right in the middle. And that gap is exactly where the done with you, the fait, avec, vous model operates. It's a structural hybrid.
It's the local running club with a dedicated professional coach. You still have to show up, you still have to sweat and, put your feet on the pavement, but you are being guided by an expert, paced by a small group of peers, and driven toward a very specific finish line over a defined period of time. You aren't just given a map and told, good luck.
And looking at the architecture of these programs in our sources, what really stands out is how aggressively they engineer that environment to force execution. They don't just offer content, they manufacture constraints.
Give me an example of that.
Well, if we look at Valentin Decker's sauce writing program, specifically their accelerator Freelance, he completely restricts cohorts to a maximum of 15 people. And it runs for a strict 12-week sprint. Mastered's UK-based bootcamp utilizes 10 weeks of intense hybrid learning, followed by a hard cutover to 6 months of highly targeted business mentoring.
Wow, so very structured.
Highly structured. Zen Factory's Solopreneur program stretches over a full year, but it's rigorously punctuated by exactly 22 collective workshops and 10 hours of mandated individual coaching.
The 15-person limit in the sauce writing program is particularly interesting to me. From a pure, profit margin perspective for the creator, capping a digital product makes 0 sense.
Right. Usually it's about scale.
Exactly. If you have a Zoom link, you can host 500 people just as easily as 15. But capping it at 15 suggests they're actively utilizing Dunbar's number or a fraction of it anyway to force intimacy. In a room of 500, you can turn your camera off, eat a sandwich, and hide in the back row. In a room of 15, if you don't do the work, your absence is glaringly obvious to the creator and your peers. They're weaponizing peer pressure.
They're totally weaponizing peer pressure, and they're also leveraging Parkinson's law with those strict 10 or 12-week deadlines.
Remind me, Parkinson's law is the one about time.
Yeah, it dictates that work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion. An open-ended course with lifetime access virtually guarantees procrastination. A 12-week sprint forces prioritization. Furthermore, unlike a traditional massive open online course, these done-with-you programs promise a level of access to the expert that borders on alarming.
Alarming how?
Well, Valentin Decker provides his personal WhatsApp number to his cohort for 7-day-a-week support. He explicitly positions himself as a virtual business partner.
Okay, I have to push back on this architecture, though. Or rather, I want to look at the friction point that every listener is probably thinking about right now, which is the economics.
The price tag?
The price tag. Let's be brutally honest about the barrier to entry here. We are moving from a world where people expect to pay $50 for a skill on a weekend to a model that demands serious capital. The Sauce Writing Accelerator is listed at 2,900 euros. Zen Factory's annual program is 4,500 euros. Even Mastered, which benefits from UK government funding, operates at a value of several £1,000s.
It's a massive jump.
It is. If I'm a listener staring at a 4,500 euro price tag, I'm immediately skeptical. How does the source material justify a 100x price increase over traditional e-learning just for some peer pressure and a WhatsApp number?
That skepticism is entirely warranted, but only if you evaluate this through the lens of buying information. The pricing model of the Done With You Accelerator is based on a completely different metric, which is the reduction of the cost of mistakes.
Okay, unpack that.
Our sources indicate these bootcamps are engineered around immediate, quantifiable return on investment. They are not teaching abstract business theory in a vacuum. They're forcing the participant to build, launch, and monetize a real business, while a seasoned professional audits their every single move.
So it's essentially an insurance policy against your own ignorance.
Think about the hidden tax that self-taught freelancers pay. They pay it in months of lost time pursuing dead-end marketing strategies. They pay it in poorly negotiated, underpriced contracts because they don't know their actual market value. They pay it in churned clients because their onboarding process is completely broken. Live Mentor's internal documentation states their primary objective is to move the student from financial insecurity to serenity, specifically by avoiding the mistakes that cost dearly.
That reframes the WhatsApp access completely. You aren't paying 2,900 euros for Valentin Decker's video module.
No, not at all.
You are paying 2,900 euros for the ability to text him your project proposal on a Tuesday afternoon and have him text back. Do not send that. Your pricing structure is off by 40%. Rewrite it using this framework right before you pitch a massive client.
Exactly. Sauce Writing sets a very literal numerical target for their participants. The goal of the 12-week sprint is to stabilize the freelancer at 40,000 euros of annual revenue. If the coach's direct intervention helps you close even one premium client you would have otherwise lost or underpriced, that 2,900 euro investment amortizes instantly. You're paying for speed and certainty in a market where trial and error is incredibly expensive.
Which brings us to the psychological trap that makes this kind of intense, expensive intervention so desperately necessary in the first place. Because it's not just beginners making these expensive mistakes. Highly skilled, veteran professionals left to their own devices will routinely build a business that slowly destroys them.
The sources refer to this as the paradox of the successful independent worker. Without a strategic framework, they don't build a business. They build a highly customized cage.
The engine running rich metaphor comes to mind here. If a car engine is running rich, it means it's getting plenty of fuel, in a freelancer's case, plenty of clients and work. But the combustion is horribly inefficient. The engine runs hot, it chugs, it wastes resources, and eventually it stalls out completely. And we have the absolute perfect case study for this mechanical failure in our sources.
Claire Gallagher.
Yes. Let's tear into the Claire Gallagher interview from the Being Freelance podcast because her story maps the exact psychological descent that these boot camps are designed to intercept.
Her narrative is remarkably candid. It really exposes the reality that having a full schedule does not equate to having a sustainable business.
For context for the listener, Claire is an Irish expat who relocated to France in 2009. Her French was virtually non-existent at the time, so she strategically tapped into the English-speaking expat network in Paris. Because she was a native English speaker who knew how to operate graphic design software, she instantly became a magnet for every expat business owner. She adopted the everything to everyone model.
Right.
If you needed a logo, a flyer, a website, a business card, Claire was your person. She never said no.
On paper, this is the freelancer's dream. She completely bypassed the acquisition struggle. She had an overflow of inbound leads and a monopoly on a specific demographic niche.
But in reality, it was an absolute nightmare. She describes this specific, visceral, rock-bottom moment that I think will hit home for a lot of people listening. She's sitting at her kitchen table, agonizing over edits for a client's website. She looks at the clock. It is 2 a.m. She can hear her husband and her young children sleeping in the adjacent rooms.
Yeah, it's a chilling moment.
And in that quiet, exhausted moment, she realizes she has become a victim of her own success. She had endless work, but her life had vanished. She wasn't seeing her friends. She was answering frantic client emails on her phone while trying to play with her son on the floor. She was sacrificing her physical health and her core relationships simply to keep the engine running.
When we cross-reference Claire's 2 a.m. breaking point with the curriculum of these done-with-you accelerators, the architecture of those programs suddenly makes perfect sense. This is exactly why Mastered, for instance, employs Nish Patel specifically in the role of a mindset coach.
A mindset coach for a business boot camp.
Exactly. A traditional e-learning course would look at Claire and say, here is a module on how to work faster in Adobe Illustrator. A Done With Your Bootcamp looks at Claire and says, your software skills are fine. Your boundaries and your business model are broken.
Because her problem wasn't a lack of output. Her problem was a deep-seated psychological fear of turning off the tap. She admitted it was terrifying to even consider saying no to people offering her cash for random low-value flyers. When you operate in scarcity for so long, turning down money feels unnatural.
It feels reckless.
Right. She needed a coach and the collective backing of a mastermind group to stand behind her and give her the permission to say, this project does not align with my revenue goals or my sanity. I am passing.
That realization triggers a fundamental structural pivot that is heavily emphasized in the Bootcamp Solopreneur source material. It's the necessary evolution from being a freelancer to becoming a solopreneur.
I really want to spend some time defining this because the wider culture uses those two terms completely interchangeably, but our sources treat them as distinctly different operating systems.
They are entirely different paradigms. A traditional freelancer trades time for money. They are a mercenary executing tasks for clients. The fundamental flaw in this model is that income is inextricably linked to raw hours worked. If Claire isn't sitting at her computer moving pixels around, she isn't generating revenue. This naturally leads to the 2 a.m. burnout because the only mathematical way to increase your income is to cannibalize your personal time. The freelancer is the machine.
So what does the solopreneur do differently?
A solopreneur builds a scalable business entity. Their primary objective is to decouple their revenue from their raw hours. They might achieve this by developing productized services where a service is packaged and sold like a product with fixed scope and pricing.
Like selling a website audit for a flat fee instead of hourly.
Exactly. Or they might build recurring revenue systems through retainers. Or, most commonly taught in these boot camps, they shift to value-based pricing. The solopreneur builds a machine that operates efficiently rather than just running themselves into the ground.
Claire's approach to dismantling that time for money trap is fascinating. When the podcast host asks her if she rigorously tracks her hours now to ensure profitability, she just laughs and compares time tracking to calorie counting.
Which is such a great analogy.
It is. She says it just gives you a stomachache, and she flatly refuses to do it. Instead, she uses a physical, visual time timer, a little red dial on her desk, purely to manage her own ADHD and keep herself from falling down internet rabbit holes. But she does not bill the client for those hours. She bills for the value of the outcome she provides.
Value-based pricing is a core tenet of the fait, avec, vous methodology. The objective of these 12-week sprints is not to teach you how to cram more billable hours into a week. It's to teach you how to make the hours you do work exponentially more valuable to the client and therefore more lucrative for you.
And the ultimate proof of concept for this shift is Claire's current lifestyle. Because she restructured her business around value rather than time, she now works a strict 4-day week. Furthermore, she takes the entire months of July and August completely off.
2 full months.
2 full months. She engineered her financial model to generate her required annual income in 10 months. Her reasoning is brilliantly pragmatic, too. She lives in the south of France, it gets incredibly hot in the summer, and nobody wants to buy consulting from a sweaty person on a Zoom call.
Fair point.
But more importantly, she recognized a closing window of time. She wants to be present with her kids while they are still at an age where they actually want to hang out with her.
That is the literal definition of success engineering. But it begs a critical mechanical question. If the ultimate goal is to abandon hourly billing, implement value-based pricing, and take the summer off, like Claire, how does a freelancer actually execute that transition?
Right, you can't just decree it.
No, you cannot simply wake up one morning, announce to your clients that you're now charging triple for the exact same service, and expect them to comply. You have to fundamentally re-engineer the offer you present to the market.
And this is where the sources get highly tactical. They point to a very specific structural framework for this re-engineering. It's the profile NT, or the T-shaped profile. This concept is the absolute backbone of Valentin Decker's sauce writing accelerator. Let's break down the anatomy of this T.
The T-shaped profile is a visual metaphor for the ideal modern skill set. The horizontal bar of the T represents a broad, generalized foundation. It encompasses a working knowledge of the wider business ecosystem.
Okay.
So if you are a writer, your horizontal bar includes understanding digital marketing funnels, basic client psychology, business strategy, and project management. You aren't an expert in all these fields, but you are fluent in them. You understand how your specific task fits into the client's broader objective of making money.
You can speak the language of the CEO, essentially. You aren't just looking at the words on the page, you are looking at the business model.
Precisely. But the horizontal bar alone just makes you a generalist. Which brings us back to Claire's initial problem of being everything to everyone. The real value lies in the vertical bar of the stem.
The specialization.
Yes, this represents a deep, highly specialized, and razor-sharp skill. You are no longer just a freelance writer. Your vertical specialization is B2B LinkedIn ghostwriting for SaaS founders. You are no longer a graphic designer. Your vertical is UX copywriting and conversion rate optimization for e-commerce checkout flows.
You have broad context, but a very narrow, incredibly sharp spear.
The Done With You programs aggressively strip away the generalist mentality. They force their cohorts to identify and cultivate that deep vertical expertise, because vertical expertise is the only thing that commands premium, value-based pricing. A client will haggle over an hourly rate for a generalist. They will gladly pay a premium flat fee for a specialist who can guarantee a specific business outcome.
We actually have a documented outcome of this exact strategy in the sources. There's a testimonial from a freelancer named Tiffany Clemenceau who went through the sauce writing program. She explicitly utilized this dual pillar approach.
How did she structure it?
She deliberately built up her business pillar, the horizontal bar, learning how to consult, how to sell, and how marketing systems integrate alongside her trade pillar, which was her deep writing expertise. By fusing those two, she stopped being an order taker. When a client asked for an article, she didn't just write it. She consulted on how that article fit into their overarching lead generation strategy. She became a strategic partner.
And the results.
As a direct result of that T-shaped positioning, she multiplied her rates by 5 in a span of just 2 years.
5x. That's incredible. But arriving at that vertical specialization requires a level of market clarity that most freelancers completely lack. You cannot build a specialized offer if you don't deeply understand the pain points of the people you are selling to. And this reveals another stark difference between traditional e-learning and the Done With You accelerators, which is the methodology of client discovery.
I am so glad you brought this up because Claire Gallagher went on a magnificent rant about this during her interview. She absolutely torched the traditional ideal client avatar exercise.
Oh, marketing, Mary.
Yes, marketing Mary. Anyone who has ever taken a basic marketing course knows exactly what this is. The instructor tells you to sit in a room and imagine your perfect client. You invent marketing Mary. Mary is 34, she drives a hybrid Volvo, she drinks oat milk lattes, and she struggles with time management.
It's absurd.
Claire rightly points out that this is entirely a work of fiction. It is a hallucination based on your own assumptions, and building a business on a hallucination is incredibly dangerous.
Because assumptions inevitably lead to misaligned offers. You end up building a product for a ghost.
Exactly. So instead of hallucinating, Claire and the methodologies taught in these intensive boot camps forces you to gather real empirical data. Claire physically got on the phone with her best past clients and interviewed them. She didn't ask them what car they drove, she asked them behavioral questions.
Like what?
Things like, what was the exact breaking point that made you look for a designer? What specific phrase did you type into Google right before you found my website? What were your hesitations before hiring me?
That is the operational difference between learning in a vacuum and learning in a fait, avec, vous accelerator. A video course gives you a PDF worksheet to fill out about marketing Mary. A done-with-you coach tells you, your assignment this week is to conduct 5 20-minute interviews with real human beings who match your target demographic, record the calls, and we will analyze their exact phrasing in our next workshop.
You are forced out of the building.
You're forced into reality. When you know exactly what your ideal client is typing into a search bar at 2 a.m., you know exactly how to forge the vertical bar of your T-shaped profile to intercept them.
Okay, I have to step in here and play devil's advocate for a significant portion of our listeners.
Go for it.
The T-shaped profile, the value-based pricing, the empirical client, interviews, this all sounds like a bulletproof strategy if you are Claire Gallagher or Tiffin Clemenceau. If you have past clients to interview, if you have a baseline of experience, this pivot makes sense.
Right.
But what if you are starting from absolute zero? You have the mindset, you understand the theory of the T-shaped profile, but your client roster is entirely empty. You have no one to interview and no proof that you can execute. How do you justify premium value when you have a blank portfolio?
It's the ultimate freelancer's catch-22. You cannot get premium clients without a premium portfolio, but you cannot build a premium portfolio without premium clients.
Exactly.
Traditional education leaves you completely stranded here, but the done-with-you models have a highly systematic workaround. We see this detailed in the L'ingénierie du succès indépendant analysis, and it's corroborated by the My Travel Project YouTube transcript. The mechanism they teach is called the projet fictif, or the fictional project.
The fictional project?
Yeah.
Walk us through the mechanics of how this actually bypasses the catch-22 without feeling like you are just, faking it.
Well, the core philosophy is that waiting for permission, waiting for a gatekeeper to hire you so you can prove your worth, is a fundamental strategic error. If you lack experience, you must proactively manufacture it. Let's say you've decided your vertical specialization is redesigning visual identities for sustainable consumer brands. You do not wait for a sustainable brand to email you. You select a real existing brand in the real world that currently has terrible branding. You proactively tear down their existing visual identity, redesign it from the ground up, and rigorously document every single step of your creative methodology.
You show the math.
You show all the math.
Yeah.
You document your initial mood boards, your typographic choices, the rationale behind your color palette, and the final high-fidelity mock-ups. The My Travel Project source gives another great example. If your vertical is community management, you don't wait to be handed a social media account.
You just make one up.
You create a comprehensive 30-day hypothetical content calendar for a target brand, complete with strategy rationale and projected engagement metrics based on industry standards. You create the exact caliber of work you wish to be hired for.
And the presentation of this manufactured work is crucial. Claire Gallagher had a phenomenal reframing for this. She refuses to use the term case study. She calls her portfolio pieces project stories.
Project stories, I like that.
Her rationale is hilarious, but incredibly sharp. She says, nobody jumps out of bed in the morning to read a case study. A case study sounds like a medical journal. A project story implies narrative and emotional engagement.
The psychological framing of a project story is vastly superior. As the L'ingénierie document emphasizes, a portfolio piece cannot simply be a gallery of aesthetically pleasing images or disembodied text. It must follow a compelling narrative arc.
Even if the project is fictional.
Especially if it's fictional. The story must present the initial problem the brand faced, describe the strategic solution you devised, detail the specific methodology you employed to execute that solution, and highlight the projected or actual results. A gallery shows what you can produce. A project story proves how you think, and clients pay a premium for how you think.
But let's say a listener wants real, tangible results in their portfolio, not just a hypothetical exercise, but they still don't have anyone willing to pay them. Is there a bridge between the fictional project and the premium client?
Yes, there is. The boot camps frequently deploy the service against testimonial strategy.
Which immediately triggers alarm bells for me. Like, working for exposure is universally recognized as the fastest way to get exploited in the freelance economy.
It is a path to exploitation if it is executed passively. But within the framework of a done-with-you accelerator, it is an aggressive, highly controlled, marketing investment. The key distinction is control over the scope.
Meaning you set the boundaries.
Precisely. You do not offer unlimited free work. You approach a highly respected figure or business in your target niche, someone who possesses the authority you currently lack. You offer a heavily discounted or entirely free, strictly time-boxed service. The explicit contractual exchange is that upon completion, they provide a detailed video testimonial and grant you full rights to use the project data in your portfolio.
It's a calculated trade. You are trading your vertical expertise for their accumulated social proof.
Yes, and the tools required to host this social proof have been completely democratized. You no longer need to understand HTML or pay for expensive web hosting to build a compelling portfolio. The sources emphasize lean execution. You can use Canva to generate a sleek, interactive PDF.
Or Notion.
Right, you can use Notion to create a minimalist, highly structured database of your project stories. Or you can spin up a WordPress or Squarespace site in an afternoon. The technological vehicle is largely irrelevant. The narrative structure of the project story is what converts the prospect.
Okay, so let's summarize where the freelancer is at this point in the bootcamp. They have engineered their T-shaped profile. They have escaped the ideal client hallucination by gathering real data. They have manufactured proof of their vertical expertise through fictional projects and project stories, and they've housed it all on a clean Notion page.
They are fully armed.
They are fully armed. But a loaded weapon in a lock safe doesn't do any good. Having a brilliant portfolio on a hidden URL doesn't generate revenue. How do the fait, avec, vous models teach their cohorts to actually acquire the clients?
This is the final and arguably most difficult hurdle, the acquisition engine. And our sources draw a very hard line between passive acquisition and proactive hunting.
Let's address the passive route first, because it's the default for almost every beginner. The sources extensively document the rise of the marketplace platforms. In Europe, Malt is the dominant force. They take a 10% commission on your invoices, which mercifully drops to 5% once you establish a long-term relationship with a client.
Still a chunk of change.
Then you have the global giants like Upwork, which utilizes a frantic bidding system and takes a hefty 20% cut of your initial earnings with a new client. And of course, Fiverr, which operates like an Amazon store for digital services, also claiming a 20% commission.
These platforms undeniably offer utility. They remove the friction of invoicing, they handle currency conversions, and they provide a built-in escrow service, which creates a baseline of trust for a nervous client. However, the advanced coaching within these bootcamps strongly warns against relying on platforms as your primary acquisition engine.
Why? If millions of clients are searching there every day, why not fish where the fish are?
Because of the structural economics of a marketplace. Platforms inherently and relentlessly commoditize your skills. When your profile is displayed in a grid next to 50 other freelancers offering ostensibly the exact same service, the nuance of your T-shaped profile is completely lost. The client's decision-making matrix is almost always reduced to a single variable price.
Which creates an inevitable race to the bottom.
A race to the bottom. And that completely vaporizes the value-based pricing strategy we spent the last 20 minutes building. You cannot maintain premium pricing, work a 4-day week, and take August off if you are engaged in a daily price war with a global labor pool on Fiverr.
It's just mathematically impossible.
Exactly. You are structurally prevented from operating as a solopreneur. This is why the most intensive Done With You accelerators shift the focus aggressively toward proactive hunting. They train their cohorts to identify, pursue, and close clients who are not yet actively shopping on Upwork. They teach you to create the demand rather than just fulfilling it.
And to understand the rigorous mechanics of this proactive hunting, we have to look at the Propulse's bootcamp source. This is not a generalized business course. It is a hyper-intensive, single-day bootcamp entirely dedicated to the brutal art of commercial prospecting and cold outreach.
They don't mess around.
They don't just offer platitudes like, leverage your network. They provide surgical, step-by-step psychological frameworks.
The Propulse's curriculum is the epitome of the fait, avec, vous ethos. Let's dissect their core acquisition framework. It's the 4-step cold call.
Step 1 is the hook l'approche. The methodology dictates that you have less than 3 seconds to validate your existence on the phone. If you launch into a generic elevator pitch, they hang up. You have to prove instantaneously that you have researched their specific company and understand their current context.
Right. And then step 2 is exploration. This is a critical pivot. Once you have their attention, you do not start selling.
You don't pitch.
No, you start diagnosing. You ask highly targeted, open-ended questions designed to uncover their points of friction, their inefficiencies, and their unfulfilled business goals. You act as a consultant diagnosing a symptom, not a vendor pushing a product.
Once they articulate their own pain, you move to step 3. Value, la valeur. This is where you deploy the vertical bar of your T-shaped profile. You position your highly specialized service not as a generic offering, but as the exact bespoke remedy to the specific pain point they just confessed to in step 2.
And finally, step 4, engagement. A cold call that ends with, "I'll email you some info," is a failed call. You must conclude by securing a micro-commitment. You dictate the next concrete step, whether that is scheduling a 15-minute strategy Zoom or getting agreement to review a tailored proposal by a specific date.
The framework is elegant, but let's introduce some friction because real life does not follow a script. No matter how perfectly you execute those 4 steps, the prospect is going to push back. They are going to throw up objections.
Always.
And the Propulses Bootcamp addresses this inevitability with a specific conversational playbook called the ARRR method.
The ARR method. It's essentially martial arts for sales resistance. It stands for acceptor, reformular, reassure, and relancer. Or accept, reformulate, reassure, and relaunch. Rather than fighting the objection, you absorb its momentum and redirect it.
I really want to break this down mechanically. Let's do a role play to demonstrate exactly how a done-with-you coach would drill this into a student. I will play the role of the busy, highly skeptical marketing director. You play the freelancer trying to pitch your vertical specialization. I'm going to hit you with the most common conversation-ending objection in the B2B space. Ready?
Go ahead.
Ring, ring. Listen, your pitch sounds interesting, but we already have a massive agency on retainer that handles all of our content creation. We don't need redundant freelancers. Thanks anyway.
Okay, so the instinct here is to argue and explain why I am better than the agency. The ARR method forbids that. First, A, acceptor. I accept their reality without an ounce of defensiveness, I'd say. I completely understand. And honestly, it's a great sign that your company already recognizes the ROI of having a dedicated content engine in place.
That immediately lowers my defenses because you aren't fighting me. Now, the first hour formula, you have to prove you actually digested what I said.
Right. So if I'm tracking with you, you currently have an agency executing your overarching day-to-day content strategy, and you absolutely do not want to disrupt a machine that is already functioning and generating leads.
Spot on. You understand my fear of disruption. Next is the second hour assurer. You must reassure me that hiring you won't cause the disruption I fear.
That makes perfect sense. And to be clear, I actually partner seamlessly alongside internal agencies all the time. My objective is never to replace your agency of record. It is to provide a highly specialized vertical expertise, specifically data-driven executive ghostwriting for your CEO that generalized high-volume agencies simply do not have the granular bandwidth to execute effectively.
Brilliant. You've repositioned yourself from a competitor to an asset. And finally, the last R, relancer. You have to relaunch the momentum of the conversation toward the engagement step of the 4-step framework.
Since your agency is already brilliantly handling the volume, what if we spent just 15 minutes next Tuesday looking at how a targeted executive ghostwriting campaign could serve as a spear tip to amplify the broad awareness work they're already doing?
Wow. Scene. That is a masterclass in conversational psychology. As a prospect, I feel heard. My existing decisions are validated, my fears of disruption are mitigated, and the barrier to the next step, a mere 15-minute call, seems incredibly low compared to the potential value.
And here is the true crucible of the done-with-you model. In the Propulses Bootcamp, the participants do not simply sit in a comfortable chair, take notes on the ARR method, and go home. That is e-learning.
Right.
In the bootcamp, they're forced into immediate execution. They run rapid-fire ping-pong objection role-plays with each other. And then the true test, the sprint d'appels, or the call sprint. In the afternoon, the cohort is required to pick up their phones and execute real cold calls to actual live prospects while the coach physically observes them.
That sounds absolutely terrifying for someone who has never done sales.
It is viscerally terrifying. But the coach is listening to the calls in real time. When the freelancer inevitably freezes or fumbles an objection, the coach provides immediate surgical feedback. They correct the freelancer's posture, their tone of voice, the pacing of their speech, the hesitation in their breathing.
Incredible.
The fait avec, vous model literally holds your hand and forces you to walk through the fire of rejection. By the end of a grueling 4-hour call sprint, the psychological terror of the telephone is completely dismantled. You cannot replicate that transformation by watching a pre-recorded video on your couch.
That is the ultimate manifestation of reducing the cost of mistakes. You fail in a highly controlled, safe environment, you are corrected instantly by an expert, and then you execute with precision in the real world where the revenue actually lives.
Exactly.
So let's pull all the way back and synthesize this journey. We have thoroughly unpacked why the fait, avec, vous, or done with you model, is systematically dismantling traditional adult e-learning. It is an engineered antidote to the isolation and inevitable abandonment of the lonely online course.
It really is. By fusing the scalable knowledge of digital content with the intense, inescapable accountability of time-boxed cohorts and high-stakes mentorship, like Valentin Decker's WhatsApp Access or Mastered's dedicated mindset coaches, these programs force a behavioral rewiring.
They intervene before the freelancer is crushed by their own inefficient engine. They transition the individual from a time-trading freelancer into a scalable solopreneur. They provide the psychological safety net required to implement value-based pricing, avoiding that 2 a.m. burnout trap that nearly broke Claire Gallagher.
And they mandate the creation of a razor-sharp, T-shaped profile, demanding that this profile is validated not by imaginary marketing avatars, but by rigorous empirical client interviews.
They provide a concrete roadmap to bypass the beginner's catch-22 by manufacturing undeniable proof of concept through fictional projects and narratively driven project stories.
And crucially, they refuse to let their cohorts hide in the shadows of commoditized marketplace platforms. Instead, they force them through the psychological gauntlet of proactive acquisition, drilling frameworks like the four-step call and the ARRR method until the terror of selling is replaced by the confidence to close premium, high-value clients.
Now, if you are listening to this deep dive, you might be thinking that this all sounds incredibly powerful, but you are simply not in a financial position to drop 4,000 euros on a 12-week boot camp today. And that is a completely valid reality.
Of course, but the true value of dissecting these sources is that you do not need to buy the boot camp to immediately apply the ethos of the fait, avec, vous model to your own professional development starting this afternoon.
Absolutely. The architecture is basically open source. How can the listener build this engine themselves?
Well, first, you must manufacture your own inescapable accountability. Do not learn in a vacuum. Find a peer, a mentor, or form a small mastermind group, and set strict, unforgiving public deadlines for your deliverables. Second, if you are lacking a premium portfolio, timebox a fictional project this weekend. Do not wait for a gatekeeper's permission. Build the exact project story for the specific premium client you want to attract.
And finally,
Shift your paradigm immediately. Begin treating your personal skill set as a scalable business entity, not just an hourly hustle. Track the value you deliver, not the minutes you sit at your desk.
I love that. You can build the running club yourself, even if you have to go out and recruit the members one by one. Which leaves us with one final, deeply provocative thought to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive.
What's that?
Well, as we observe the overwhelming documented success of these highly targeted, hyper-intensive, cohort-based accelerators, if this 12-week done-with-you model is proving so remarkably efficient at transforming aimless adults into highly focused, high-earning, well-balanced professionals equipped with specialized T-shaped profiles, exactly how long will it be until this agile hybrid model completely disrupts and ultimately replaces the bloated, generalized, and increasingly expensive 4-year traditional university degree?
When you look at the ROI, that disruption doesn't seem like a distant possibility. It seems like an impending inevitability.
It really does. Build your running club, define your vertical, and keep pushing forward. We'll see you on the next deep dive.